Hello, I'm back. I missed Wednesday. Just had a lot going on. Trying to rearrange this place. Trying to go into a new place, one that's more suited, one that's a little structurally more sound, one that has an elevator that will help with my back because it's shredded. Um, but we'll see. They may not let me go until this place falls apart. So look for me on the news. An apartment building collapsing in Queens. Look for that. I usually do one free, one pay behind the paywall, which would have been Wednesday, but now that's today. But I'm gonna do this one free anyway because it's your fault I didn't. It's my fault I didn't come Wednesday, not your fault. What else are we doing? Oh, let's turn up the volume. Someone complained about my volume on one of the videos, but when I played it, it was fine. But let's make sure. All right, we're still in The Deficit Myth, Stephanie Kelton. Very good book. And I've been doing some publishing things too for my store and just trying to figure some things out. So let's get into the reading. I just had an idea for something. See, the ideas come. I have to write them down. I have to try to remember them. What MMT describes is the reality of our post-Bretton Woods monetary system. We are no longer on a gold standard, and yet much of our political discourse is still rooted in the outmoded way of thinking. I thought we was on the gold standard. I didn't realize we came off in the 1970s. I still thought in 2000 that we were. So it's very important that we understand how things work. We see it every time a reporter asks a politician, where will you find the money to do that? It's long past time we came to grips with what it means to be the issuer of sovereign fiat currency. For the currency issuer, money is no object, literally or figuratively. It doesn't exist in some scarce physical form like gold that the government needs to find in order to spend. It is conjured into existence from a computer keyboard each time the Federal Reserve carries out an authorized payment on behalf of the Treasury. Conjured up. It's not real. And you people that's centering your life around this stuff, yes, we have to have a roof over our head. Yes, we have to have food in our mouth. Yes, yes, yes. You can do it without quote unquote money. Or you can do it without having to grind yourself down to mulch to then go get this paper, to then go get the housing that exists for you to live in, whether you work or not, and the food that's grown, really at this point, whether you farm it or not. That's what we have to get into our heads. I don't know if we ever will. Trying to talk to people about this, they say it can't be that easy. It sounds too simple. Yeah, things are simple. Anytime someone tells you it's complicated, they're lying to you. They don't want to give you the answers. They're trying to hustle you. Remember that. Nothing's complicated. Fundamentally, everything comes down to simple concepts. There's justice, there's injustice, there's empathy, there's indifference, and because you're bouncing in between the two, that's not complicated. It's not complicated. Okay? You're either one or you're the other. And even if you say, well, sometimes I'm in this corner, sometimes that's not complicated either. No one can count on you if you're bouncing back and forth, but it's not complicated. You're bouncing back and forth between justice and injustice. You're bouncing back and forth between empathy and indifference. You bounce back. Life is very simple. We've made it, we believe it's complicated because people tell us that to keep us confused and to keep us under control. And And I'm not sure, I know it's for their benefit. It might also I'm starting to wonder when I'm looking at the savagery of the masses, if it's also maybe a little bit for our benefit. I'm starting to think that maybe, yeah, they're doing it for both at this point, especially after 2020. That might sound like a free lunch. It isn't. MMT isn't a blank check. It doesn't grant us carte blanche when it comes to funding new programs. And it's not a plot to grow the size of government. As an analytical framework, MMT is about identifying the untapped potential in our economy, what we call our fiscal space. If there are millions of people looking for paid work and our economy has the capacity to produce more goods and services without raising prices, then we have the fiscal space to bring those resources into productive employment. How we choose to utilize the fiscal space is a political matter. And here, MMT can be used to defend policies that are traditionally more liberal. Medicare for all. I'd rather have Medicaid for all. Medicare doesn't cover eyeglasses and hearing. For some odd reason, the thing that old people need, dental and hearing, and it doesn't cover it. No, it doesn't cover hearing and dental. I think it covers eye. Free college. Well, I mean, college ain't really worth much anymore. Or middle class tax cuts. Or more conservative military spending or corporate tax cuts. The point is that we run our economy like a 6-foot tall guy who wanders around perpetually hunched over in a house with 8-foot ceilings because someone convinced him that if he tries to stand up, that he'll suffer a massive head trauma. That's it. For too many years, we've been crouching down when we could have been standing strong. Irrational fears about government, debt, and fiscal deficits caused policymakers in the US, Japan, and the UK, and elsewhere to pivot away from fiscal stimulus toward austerity. In the years following the global financial crisis, this forced immeasurable pain on tens, if not hundreds, of millions worldwide. Populist movements on both the left and the right found inspiration in these failings. Not everything can be fixed through a more generous application of the federal budget. Austerity has exacerbated many of our social and economic problems. But budget cuts are not the sole drivers of stagnation and rising inequality. Restoring economic security to the working class will require tackling monopoly power, sweeping reforms to our tax code, labor laws, and trade and housing policies, and more. It will also require a new economic model. We must end cruel and inefficient practice of relying on democratically unaccountable central bankers to target the right mix of inflation and unemployment. To build an economy for the people, responsibility for maintaining employment and income security must become the responsibility of elected representatives of the people. Congress, with its great power over the federal budget, must play an active and permanent role in stabilizing output and employment through time. And that sounds more complicated than it really needs to be for me. Okay, good. For me, it's this simple. We're going to stop there and we'll come Sunday with the other part, the prescriptive side of MMT. It's really simple. We have, and we're building a lot in New York, and I know somebody that does a podcast in Utah said they're building in California. I know somebody said, so they're building all over the place. So we have places to live. You build places to live just for that, places to live. If you have places to live that are empty and people living on the street, That's insane. It's just that simple. If you can't get one into the other, there's something wrong with you. And if you can't get one in the other, and you're continually to build and build and build, and more people are continually to live under bridges, on parks, in bus stations, and so on, then that's insanity, breeding insanity, breeding insanity. It's that simple for me. Now, if you want to say, hey, we're going to match housing to people's income, what they actually earn, rather they work for themselves or work at a company, that's fine. If you want to give us a stimulus or a UBI, that's fine. If you want to give us a UBI and get rid of the welfare system, that's fine. I mean, if you want to put more power in our hands and you give us enough that brings us above the poverty line and we have to do the rest, that's fine. But you're gonna have to figure out a different way than what we're doing. This is not working. It's madness. It's insanity. And I'll give you an example of what I want. I'm in New York. I'm self-employed. Some of you know my story. So I was swept off of the train in the mayor's program. They sweep people off the train if you're homeless, put you in a shelter, put you in a program to get you housing. So he swept me off the train. Actually, I talked to the people. It's a team of people with a nurse and police. And I spoke to them for about 45 minutes. The nurse and everything. And we talking. We were talking so long, the nurse, she said, you gonna get me fired because I got to take care of these other people. We got into such a deep conversation. So she left me. So I went to a shelter where they had a decent housing specialist. He got me into an apartment. It took me 9 months between the time I showed them what my paperwork is, because I showed them what my paperwork is, and they said, this is what you're eligible for. Fine. It took me 8 months between the time they said I was eligible to get out of the shelter. They were paying, and I never knew, it was between $1,800 a month to $3,600 a month. And I believe it was $3,600 a month to sleep on a cot. I was in a room with another person, so they were paying another $3,600 for him to sleep. So they were paying $7,200 for me and my roommate to sleep in a slum-like conditions. And I mean, these conditions were worse than prison conditions. And I say that because we were free to leave, sure, but the conditions were worse. We didn't have a bathroom in every room. We had 2 bathrooms on each floor. 20 men had to share 2 house bathrooms, not industrial bathrooms. I'm talking about bathrooms where you go in, you have urinals, and that would have been okay. 2 regular house bathrooms. Toilets were always clogged because you had 20 men using it. So sometimes bathrooms were closed. There was a period where we were in there, it was for a couple of weeks. It was 20 men on each floor. So 20, 40, 60. There was about 60 men in the whole facility. And like, most of the bathrooms were broken, and we all 60 men had to share like 2 or 3 house bathrooms. 60 people, 3 bathrooms. For $7,600 a room. So just imagine the city was paying that. Now think, you could have just gave us $1,400 stimulus a piece. You could have took the paperwork, said, here's your $1,400 stimulus, go find you a place. You would have been saving $2,200. Or you could have said, here's $2,000 a month. Go find your place, and then they could have said, well, we help you with places. Here's more affordable places here. Here's that. We can vouch for you. We can even, whatever the case may be. That would have been so much simpler. But they were paying $3,600 per cot because we had food service, and food services was a whole nother contract. I don't even want to. After the migrants came in New York City, they said they were paying more than $1,000 a month for food service per person. So I don't even want to say how much the contract was for that. I think it was 30 something dollars a day per person. So if you had 60 men times 30, you do that math, per day. So there's an enormous amount of money spent to keep us in temporary, subhuman conditions. And there's no reason why we should have to do that. We need a new system. We need a new way of thinking about things. We need a new scale. And if you're saying, well, why should you give everybody a stimulus to do? Well, again, give it to everybody. Give everybody that to do the work they want, instead of trying to shove everybody into 2 or 3 industries. There are so many people now trying to deliver Uber Eats and Grubhub and all that. They're running into each other in the street. They're almost running over babies on these e-bikes. It's madness. It's complete and utter madness, because we don't want to switch. We don't want to transition. And I always talk about 2020 because that was supposed to be the great reset, when we were supposed to transition into the new way. Stimulus checks, UBIs, and move forward. Child tax credits, move forward. People were moving, people were doing well, better. The environment was better because you didn't have people going to useless jobs, so you didn't have as much traffic. You didn't have as much pollution. So, all economic policy should be centered around what our sanity and human policy is. Then you develop economic policy. We do it backwards in this country. We make everything economics and then try to bring humanity in last. That's another form of insanity. But even if you want to live that way, it doesn't even make sense for us to function the way we function. Even if you want to say economics, our economics it doesn't make any sense. We're spending more money to get less. We spend more money on healthcare. We're sicker than everybody in the industrial world. It doesn't make sense. We spend more money on our housing issue when it comes to homeless people, illnesses, the mental illness treatment. Because at some point, you have to do something with homeless people. You can't just, they get sick and they wander into hospitals. You have to treat them. And by that time, they're so bad off, you're spending way more than if you just gave them a stimulus. And if they're on the street and they're spending their stimulus on drugs, then force them into rehab. If they're mentally ill, put them into a psych ward. These are the things that you can do. I mean, it's way cheaper to do that, because the only alternative is going to be jail and prison. And right now in New York City and New York State, people are going to tell you, well, they're not locking people up in New York because they got these liberal DAs, and they can't afford it. It costs $300,000 to lock someone up in Rikers Island. That's the jail. A year. It costs $500,000 a year to put someone in prison in New York State. You have to pay prison guards. You have to pay the maintenance of the buildings. These jails and prisons are old. You have to pay wardens. You have to pay administrators. And you have to pay these correctional officers. Some of these correctional officers are making $150,000, $200,000 a year per officer. And because they're putting their life in danger every time they go into these facilities. It's a lot of craziness. So they're not going to lock you up for stealing from a store, because they're not going to lock you up for stealing $100 thing or $900 worth of stuff and pay. $300,000 to put you in jail for a year? They'd be better off just giving the store back the money. You know what I mean? Which stores can write off loss in their taxes in New York State. I don't know of other states they can do that. I think they can do that everywhere. So these are the things we need to deal with when it comes to economics. And we need a new economics yesterday. As a matter of fact, it's coming. It's coming because 2020 was a taste. And now we've gone back and it's misery times 10. And so it's just a matter of the powers that be, the ones who don't want to admit that they were wrong, implementing this thing. So it may be another crisis, it may be another lockdown, it may have to be another thing. It might be all these protests might become a thing that they use to say, all right, we're going to shut things down and we're going to do the Great Reset again like we wanted to do it. And then you'll see a rent moratorium will happen. Because more protests, more people in the street, more savagery, more smash and grabs, society's coming undone. So the more you see that, you might start getting curfews, shutdowns, and then you might start getting things like the stimulus again and the child tax credit again. And so I think that's what's going to happen. If that doesn't happen, then we're going to go the other route in which people will just be taking over properties because remember, if management companies own all these buildings and apartments, they're not protecting them. They don't live anywhere near them. So people will take them, will control them by force. You will descend into clans, gangs, groups that run certain territories. I don't think we'll fall to that. There's just too much to lose. Remember, the ruling class likes to enjoy their rulership. That's the whole point of being in the ruling class. So we'll see. I think it's going to turn toward another 2020 type thing, and then we'll build out from that. Until next time, take care of yourself. Be safe. It's going to be a rough summer. It's going to be a rough summer. If they don't do something, some kind of new system in place, then we're going to be it's going to be a problem. So be safe, be safe, be safe. And if I'm around on Sunday or Monday, I'll give you the other reading will be behind the paywall. If I'm around next week, I'll see you then with another video. Bye-bye.